Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Just One Question. I am your host, of course. You know, Lion Flood. The goal of this podcast is simply to inspire, educate, and hope that you can walk away with some knowledge that may be passed on through generation. So let's get a word from our sponsor and let's get ready to roll.
You're listening to Just One Question with your host, Lion Flood. This podcast is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm excited for all of our listeners who are listening to us currently on all of the platforms: Apple Podcasts, Google, Amazon Music, Spotify, everywhere else. And for our viewers who are watching currently, I sincerely appreciate it. I hope that you take a moment to like and subscribe for any future videos to get notifications. For all our listeners, make sure you download the episode and rate so that way we can get shown the love, move up inside those polls, and bring you more content that makes sure it's enjoyable for you, your family, and all your loved ones. Without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's put a round of applause together for our next guest and our podcast. Um, just I can't tell you the words that I have about him, but actually, before I do that, let me just tell you a little bit about himself, and then he can do that as well. But we're bringing up Jackie Lewis. He's a professional speaker, he's an author. He was raised in a foster care system, and now he's dedicating his life to assisting those who are less fortunate than him. He actually has published books, about three of them, right? Some of them on self help, relationship books, and a book depicting the struggle of manhood. Which one I'm going to go pick up? I'm telling you. It's basically just to help young men navigate through life. Ladies and gentlemen, give a big round of applause for Jackie. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you
I
for
am
having me.
absolutely, yeah, no, thank you for being here. First off, let me go ahead and get your take on yourself. Introduce yourself to all of our listeners, our viewers currently. Let them know who you are and what's going on in your life.
Yeah. So, the most important thing to me is I am a husband and a father, father of three. I'm a professional speaker, published multiple books. My favorite is the newest one, The Unexplained Reality of Manhood. You know how a lot of times you get older men, they be like, man, I wish I knew then what I knew now. But they never tell you what they know. They just say they wish they knew.
Yeah,
So what I wanted to do, I'm only 34, so I still have a lot of learning. I'll probably write a new one to incorporate everything else that I've learned. But, in my 34 years, this is what I've learned thus far. And
right.
one of the best things about that book and why it's my favorite is because I reached out to other men that I know and that I admire, and they gave me a little piece of advice that they would like to offer to other young men. So I think that part is very cool. So,
That's so great to hear, man. Like when I hear this, right? And you touched on an important point there when you said they keep the knowledge and then they don't pass it down, right? Now, I don't think that's directly intentional. One of the big things that I always talk about and I've learned in research is that sometimes our culture, our history, it kind of teaches us that we shouldn't do those things. Real men shouldn't share feelings. They shouldn't cry. They shouldn't do those kind of things. And it's such a relief to see someone who's saying, you know what? No, I'm going to pass that knowledge. I want someone to see. I've heard that your books are on Amazon and I think some are on Barnes and Noble, right? So if
yes.
anyone wants to see those, go and pick them up. Let's start with a little bit of your methodology on why you write and maybe how. The reason I'm asking you that is because maybe there's someone out there who's listening and say, you know what, I may want to write a book, but I don't know where to start at.
Yeah.
What's your process?
So I take it as a conversation angle. I want to speak directly to the reader. So when you're reading it, I'll sneak in little jokes here and there. I think in my relationship book, I made a joke about me doing more cooking than my wife because she doesn't really like cooking. But I want to talk directly to the reader so I can make a direct connection with them. And then I do it simply because I don't believe knowledge should be hoarded. I believe it's for the masses, and I it's one of the things that I don't feel is given freely enough. There's if it's a business, then by all means you charge what you should. But as far as knowledge about life and just trying to get better and bettering yourself, I feel like that should be free because I want to see everybody do their best in life because everybody's struggling in life. That's what I've learned. Everybody is struggling and everybody is doing their best to get through life with their everybody has on their blinders. They're doing what they
Yeah.
can with what they have. So if I can add a little more value to someone's life, what my books are $5, a happy meal. So I just want to help everyone that I can.
Yeah. And you know what? It's such a true thing because I've traveled the world and I've been to a lot of other places and I've lived there. So, not just a weekend or a week trip, right? And even to this day, I still see other countries who have apprenticeships. Like, I don't see that here in our culture too many times, where someone says, hey, let me grab you by the hand and teach you. Let me,
Hmm.
come over after school and let me show you how to work on some of these cars or vehicles, right? We want to give young people a way to stop some violence or get out of that, but we don't assist in that. Maybe we can, I remember when I was up in school, I don't want to give my age too much, but we used to have shop where we would go in and learn how to do things with woods and make bird homes, and I don't see that in school that much. Do you think that some of your childhood had an effect, growing up, like you stated in the orphanage? Can you kind of talk about that a little bit, in case maybe someone is listening who's like, that was me?
Yeah. So for me, I grew up. I say there's two parts to my life. There's a part where I was in the foster care system and I was bouncing around from home to home. And then there's a place where I finally settled, which is called SOS Children's Village in Coconut Creek. It's a worldwide organization, but I was fortunate enough to be located at the one in Coconut Creek. So while I'm bouncing around from home to home in my first phase of life, I'm making connections with people, adults and other children, and these people are telling me, hey, I care about you, I'm never going to leave you, and then the next day you're ripped from that person. So at that point, now I develop trust issues. I can't trust people, I can't trust adults, because to me everybody's a liar. Every adult that I've met has said that they're going to be there for me, and they've left me. And even on top of that, there are some that don't care for you, and you're at their house and they tell you you're not gonna be anything. I remember one time when I was a child and I was in elementary school, so I couldn't have been any older than 10 years old. And I'm crying and I'm saying, I want my mommy, I want my mommy. And I remember the foster parent at the time, she would tell me, your mom doesn't want you. That's why you're here. And not even realizing or caring that my mother had passed away. I'm just a child looking for comfort and nobody cared. And then the second phase of my life, I was fortunate enough to go to this place, SOS Children's Village. And there I was able to build a community. I was able to build a family. We literally called the other children there, we called each other's cousins. We called the house parents, aunties and uncles, mom and dads. And that's where I met my foster parent. And I was adopted at the age of 16, which is fortunate because most children past a certain age, they don't get adopted. So at that
Yeah.
point, I was finally able to build a family. build relationships.
Wow. And some of these things I pretty much assume you're mentioning within some of your books. So for our listeners, I have on screen here the title of his book, and it resonated with me so much. It says, The Unexplained Reality of Manhood, the Complexities of Manhood Brought to Light. Just if the title alone doesn't grab your attention, tell some of the viewers, tell some of the listeners, kind of little excerpts of why they should get this book. What's in it? What's going to make them say, I don't want to put this book down?
So for me, it goes through all the different aspects. It's not an all encompassing book because, again, my knowledge is limited. I can only speak to what I know. So it's not an all encompassing, but it does have a lot of what you need. So it has, my favorite one is holistic leadership. That means I'm providing holistically for not only myself, but for my family. And if I don't have a family, then I'm doing what I can to build myself into being a holistic man. That means I need to be healthy physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially.
Definitely, definitely. So those little things, and that's a great thing that where I hear you say, "Hey, this is only my journey that I can speak from to this point." Right? I know I hear
Mm,
people sometimes. We hear the gurus. They talk about a lot of things that maybe they never experienced. I love authenticity. It comes out so much. I'm putting up on screen, ladies and gentlemen, and for our listeners, a second book that Jackie speaks of, and it is called make sure I get it right. The After the Ceremony, Now What? The Mini Marriage Manual. Now, before you talk about this, I want to bring up, let me see, I want to show you my face here. I want to bring up why this means so much to me. Because as a African American man, as a black man, I can attest for me, and probably for most people who can kind of experience this, we are not taught how to love. We don't have that manual that says, hey, maybe if your wife or your spouse says this, you shouldn't just say, well, go fix it. you
yeah.
know it's a learning experience, and I love hearing people talk about, hey, you know what, like my wife and I, for example, we have a podcast that we did together during the pandemic, and we talked about ways that we kept strong during those trying times. What does this book mean to you, and what is that bringing up for you?
So with this book, it's again, it's my personal journey through marriage. I've been fortunate enough to be married for 6 years. I just had my sixth anniversary August 27th. So in this, it's what I've learned. And we did go to marriage counseling. And premarital counseling is great, but I've learned that it only gets you so far. Like it reaches a milestone to where that premarital counseling is no longer valid, and it becomes invalid because we're human and we're always growing. So once you reach a certain point, you're literally no longer that person that got married 6 ago, or you should be, because you should always be striving to better yourself. So once you reach that point, you have to literally reintroduce yourself to each other. You should be constantly dating. You should be constantly having hard conversations, constantly being reintroduced to each other. And for me, one of the best parts about this book is something my wife developed. It's called the truth moment. And what happens is, at any given time, for any given reason, she can say truth moment. And then in that moment, I stop whatever I'm doing, or she stops whatever she's doing, and it becomes a safe space. I know what she tells me after she says truth moment, it should not be judged. It should not be taken from a invasive place. It shouldn't cause offense, because she's literally trying to speak her truth in that moment.
Wow.
So for me, just that little nugget alone, and knowing how to navigate through truth moments is great, because a lot of people, they never find a safe space with their spouse to talk about anything.
Wow. That is so, and everyone has a little different meaning to it. But that is like so, it hits you, right? A truth
Mhm.
moment. I love that. And we kind of like you said, people aren't the same people from 5 years ago, right? Even in marriage, we think we just get married. It still takes work. My
Yes.
wife and I, we have little things that we do, and it keeps us engaged. It keeps us in a smaller date, even to the point of like we have a little bell in the house and it says kiss me now or something, so
Mhm.
she'll go and ring the bell because as a man sometimes I forget she just needs a little kiss. Even if it's on the cheek, if I just walk by
Mhm.
and it's not intentional, it's just kind of the way I was brought up, right? And
Yeah.
so she'll ring the bell and I know she really wants it when she keeps hitting it and it goes ding 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 ding. And I'm like, I'm coming, baby, I'm coming. So, but that is a great thing. And I love that moment of truth moment, right? And even with she and I, we would do things where when we first started dating, when we first started learning each other, we had like a little totem or something where one of us would hold, and who's ever holding it at that moment, that's their turn to speak. Because the
Mhm.
one thing I started learning as I started getting older is most people don't directly listen to learn; they listen just because they're ready to speak. They're hearing you, but they're like, I just can't wait to tell you what I want to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing. And I'm gonna ask you one more thing, but this was another part that I had to learn as well. When we get into disagreements or an argument, right? Usually there's one person who wants to talk it out right now. And maybe someone else is like, no, I just don't want to talk. And what I've learned is that by just walking away, we're not validating that person's feelings. So it could be something as simple as saying, hey, you know what, honey? I understand this is important to you. And I promise you, we're going to talk about it. I just need a few minutes to kind of get my thoughts together. But I reassure you, I won't ignore your feelings on this. That right there could at least tell a person, oh, okay, he knows that this is important to me, or she knows this is important to me, versus just
Mhm.
walking out. So that's book is something I think anyone could learn from. What's next on a thing for you? I mean, you've like conquering the world. What's next on scene for you, sir?
That's the plan. My goal is to not only help people, but I do genuinely want to change the world. I believe that this is a generation that is more intelligent than the previous. We have access to more information than the last or any generation before us. So why should we not be the ones that change the world? So on my list next, I am going to be speaking on. It's called "Your Words Have Power." So I'll be speaking, presenting a little 10-minute speech for them in December, and then I'm also in the works of creating a nonprofit organization for mentoring at-risk young men.
Hmm, that is great. And it means that the future generation is in great hands, right? I know that's a cliche thing to say, but it is because when you were just saying it, my wife and I talk about this and we tell our kids this all the time.
Mm.
They're out the house, they're grown, but I remember my grandparents used to tell us these stories about how they walked to school backwards up the hill in the
Yeah.
snow, and you don't get it, but like when they were coming up, they didn't have cabs, kind of. They didn't have the access to
Hmm.
city bus, and so when we grew up, we did. And now the kids in this generation got Google and
Hmm.
Alexa, and they can help you out. Uh, it's so amazing, but you have the opportunity to change the world. You have the opportunity to literally do something that could affect everyone. Even to the point of now, everyone has access to podcasts or making their own little radio station. You can reach so many people
Yeah.
where we had to find a job and circle the classified ads and then walk. you know, they can put in an application to 15 different jobs by sitting on their couch in their pajamas or something. So, is there anything that you think we've missed that you would like to just get back out to the listeners. Where can they find you? Where can they find your book, your work? If there's someone out there who wants listening to this and say, you know what, I would love for that man to come and speak to my group or my audience or my company, where can they find you?
Yeah. So you can find me at my website is thejackielewis.com. You can find me on Instagram underscore the Jackie Lewis, Facebook the Jackie Lewis. Those are going to be my main points. If you want to email me, it's thejackielewis at gmail.com. And then yeah, I'm here wherever you need me. I'll be there.
I love this so very much. Thank you for coming on, sir. This has been very inspirational. You know, it's something that I love because we have a group here. I'm in Las Vegas, for most who don't know, and we were doing this thing called Mastermind Group, where it was a group of positive business owners, local store owners, local entrepreneurs, whatever, and we would get together right before the pandemic really started happening, and we would talk about how can we help each other. I
Mhm.
have a definitely win-win mentality. I think too many people say, "What's in it for me?" Of course, we want to know what's in it for us, but what can we also help someone with? I am a firm believer that no one, I don't care where you're at, how much money you got, you didn't make it on your own. We all need help somehow. There's someone that directly or indirectly helps us. And if you can do that, sir, I am looking for it. I can't wait to maybe get an email from you or a message or just see your face across someplace saying, you know, here's our next speaker or headliner or something. Or one of my biggest things I love to see, and I know this is going to happen for you, is for someone to write you one day and
Mhm.
say, hey, your words got me here or helped me through something, or, you know, that is a big thing. And I'm telling you, I'm gonna bawl my eyes out. I'm a man, but I'm still gonna cry. I'll cry on air. There's no feeling. I'm telling you. So thank you. Is there any last parting words or anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean, I believe life is really simple. You should never become the stumbling block for somebody else because
Mm,
everybody's life is hard. So instead of becoming the stumbling block, become the support that they can lean
wow. Man, listen here. Let me get off this thing here, boy. All right, hang on for 1 second, Jackie. I appreciate that. Just stay with me 1 second. Let me do a little cleanup here. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found inspiration, words of wisdom in this. Anything you can take away to pass along to yourself, friends, family members, do it. Be the change in the world that you see, right? And that you want. Thank you for taking a moment and listening to Just One Question with me, your host, Lion Flood, and my guest today, Jackie Lewis. I sincerely appreciate it. You all have a great day, and until the next show.
on. Yeah, yeah.